Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. Today we're going to recap yesterday's NFL game between the Cowboys and the Ravens, look back on yesterday's college basketball games, and look ahead to tonight's games, the latest with the NHL situation. We'll preview a little bit of tonight's episode of The Masked Singer and my best bet of the day. All right, we'll start with the NFL. The Ravens with a much-needed 34-17 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. It's like a little bit of a get-right performance for that team as the Ravens go to 7-5. Dallas drops to 3-9. Lamar Jackson wasn't great, though. 12 of 17, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick, and then on the ground, 13 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Andy Dalton, 31 of 48, 285 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. As Dallas's hopes of stealing that NFC East keep looking dimmer and dimmer. And it looks like it's going to be between the Giants and Washington. Baltimore kind of gets themselves back in the mix a little bit. They just have to win out to make sure that they could secure themselves a spot, let alone make the playoffs. So the Ravens are under a ton of pressure now to pretty much win out and go 11-5. Alrighty then. Now we'll move on to college basketball. We will go over the results from last night and look ahead to what should be a busy slate tonight. New Orleans over Florida National, 74-57. Morgan State over Iona, 83-72. LaSalle over Lincoln, Pennsylvania, 80-62. UMBC over Delaware, 76-61. Number 5 Kansas over number 8 Creighton, 73-72. Indiana State over Truman State, 88-66. Seton Hall over Wagner, 78-45. South Florida over Stetson, 73-62. VMI over Greensboro, 165. Miami over Purdue, 58-54. Number 12 Tennessee over Colorado, 56-47. Longwood over NC&T, 77-60. Utah over Idaho State, 75-59. Charleston Southern over Carver, 94-59. Dayton over Northern Kentucky, 66-60. Ball State over Northern Illinois, 79-70 in overtime. St. John's over Rider, 82-79. Kent State over Detroit Mercy, 80-66. Campbell over Jacksonville, 80-78. Louisiana over LSU Alexandria, 90-75. Mount St. Mary's over St. Francis, Pennsylvania, 75-57. Central Connecticut State over Fairleigh Dickinson, 94-87. Bryant over St. Francis Brooklyn, 101-82. Georgia over Montana, 63-50. South Alabama over William Carey, 80-67. Georgetown over Coppin State, 80-48. Minnesota over Boston College, 85-80 in overtime. Number 3 Iowa over number 16 North Carolina, 93-80. Number 22 Ohio State over Notre Dame, 90-85. Belmont over Tennessee State, 79-64. Fort Hays State upsets Kansas State, 81-68. Kansas State might be the worst Power 5 or Major 6 team this year. That might be an early overreaction, but oof. St. Louis over Central Arkansas, 88-65. Memphis over Mississippi Valley State, 94-57. Oklahoma State over Oral Roberts, 83-78. Murray State over Austin Peay, 87-57. Penn State upsets number 15 Virginia Tech, 75-55. Utah State over College of Idaho, 90-64. Weber State over Westminster, Utah, 85-73. Mississippi State over Jackson State, 82-59. Marquette over Green Bay, 82-68. Number 6 Illinois over number 10 Duke, 83-68. Number 21 Rutgers over Syracuse, 79-69. USC over UC Irvine, 91-56. St. Mary's over UTEP, 73-61. And Portland State over Northwest Washington, 88-48. Alrighty. Today's games, it's a busy slate yet again. At 2 o'clock, you have Mars Hill and Radford. We can skip that. 2:30, Campbell against New Orleans. It's an interesting game. ESPN doesn't have a line. I project Campbell by 6.5. Meanwhile, it's not on FanDuel yet either. 3 o'clock, you have Chicago State and Loyola Chicago. I project Loyola by 33.5. Meanwhile, Loyola's giving 34.5, so 1 point off. I'm going to go to the total instead, 138.5. Chicago State's rarely been an over team to start the season, but that's because their defense has been so hideous. So give me the over 138.5 in Chicago State, Loyola Chicago. Next up is 4 o'clock window, Bryant and St. Francis Brooklyn. So NEC action, I project St. Francis Brooklyn by 1.5. The line's not posted yet on FanDuel. And ESPN has it Bryant by 3.5. I'm going to take St. Francis Brooklyn plus the 3.5 to keep it within the number. I like the hook, but I think San Fran Brooklyn is going to win the game outright. I really do. So give me St. Francis Brooklyn plus the 3.5. Central Connecticut State against Fairleigh Dickinson. That line's obviously not posted on FanDuel because Dickinson's in New Jersey. I project Dickinson by 22.5. And they're only giving 8.5. I'm going to lay the 8.5 with Fairleigh Dickinson. UMass and LaSalle postponed. 4:30 Big Ten Network, Rhode Island at number 13, Wisconsin. I project Wisconsin by 22. They're only favored by 9.5, so give me Wisconsin minus 9.5 against Rhode Island. 5 o'clock, Furman against Cincinnati. I project Furman by 6.5. Cincinnati's favored by 3.5. I'm taking Furman plus the 3.5. Juices on Cincinnati. So minus 105 on Furman plus the 3.5. And I'm taking them straight up at plus 152 on the money line. ESPN 2, Maryland, Clemson, ACC Big Ten Challenge. I project Clemson by 2. Clemson's favored by 1.5. Total's 133.5. This is tough. On the surface, you would think that these are two under teams. But I'm going to take over 133.5. It's valuable at minus 106. So give me Maryland, Clemson over 133.5 at minus 106. Alrighty. ESPNU, Providence, TCU, Big East, Big 12 battle. I project TCU by 2.5. TCU is giving 3.5. Total 129.5. So a lot of totals today because my lines have been pretty good. In terms of me versus the market. I'm going to take over 129.5. Juices on it, though, at minus 114. I just think Providence's offense is too good, and I think this game's going to be played into the 130s. And I think that TCU will probably win the game. Loyola Marymount, Stanford canceled. 5:30, Western Illinois, Miami of Ohio. I project Miami of Ohio by 9.5. They're giving 14.5. I'm taking Western Illinois plus the 14.5. Juices on it, though, at minus 115. 6 o'clock, Northern Iowa at number 19. Richmond, I project Richmond by 4.5. They're giving 9.5. So I'm taking Northern Iowa plus the 9.5 here to keep this thing close. Transylvania, Morehead State, we can skip. 6 o'clock, Fox Sports 1, Toledo against Michigan. I project Michigan by 3. Michigan's laying 13.5, so I'm taking Toledo plus the 13.5. I was just not big on Michigan this year. So that's why my projections for them are so low for right now. Toledo plus 13.5, I'm taking it. Okay, next up, you got 7 o'clock, Abilene Christian at number 17, Texas Tech. I project Tech by 14.5. Meanwhile, Texas Tech is giving 16.5. So, I really don't like betting against Texas Tech. But I have to do it here, even though it's only a 2-point thing. So, give me Abilene Christian plus 16.5. And it's very valuable at minus 105. Robert Morris in West Virginia canceled. That was supposed to be tonight at 7 o'clock. Next up, Cal State Bakersfield at Arizona. I project the Wildcats by 16.5. Meanwhile, Arizona is giving 17.5, so 1 point off. I'm going to take over 131.5. I think Arizona's a good offensive team. I think Bakersfield could score them. I think this is the mid-130s. So I like that one. North Carolina A&T at VCU. I project VCU by 13.5. Meanwhile, VCU is giving 21.5. Give me NC A&T plus a 21.5 at minus 108. All right, we can skip a couple of these games. Plain Park, Youngstown, St. Adrian, Eastern Michigan, Florida National, Jacksonville, St. Andrews, UNC Wilmington. We can skip. So say with the Carver and the Citadel. Next up, Stony Brook, Hofstra. I project Hofstra by 11.5. Meanwhile, Hofstra is giving 9.5, so I'm laying the 9.5 with Hofstra. Juices on them, though, at minus 115. SIU, Edwardsville, and Valparaiso. I project Valparaiso by 13.5. Meanwhile, Valpo is... I don't even see the line on here. Valpo is giving 12. So I'm going to lay the 12 with Valparaiso against SIU Edwardsville. Marshall and Charleston. I project Marshall by 11. Marshall's giving 5.5. So I'm laying the 5.5 with Marshall against Charleston. Next up, you got Eastern Illinois at Evansville. I project Eastern Illinois by a whopping 14.5. They're only laying 4.5, so I'm laying 4.5 with Eastern Illinois against Evansville at minus 105. All right, next up is Arkansas Pine Bluff at Arkansas State. I project State by 18. Meanwhile, State's giving 13.5, so I'm laying Arkansas State minus 13.5 against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Lamar at UL Monroe. I project Lamar by 3.5. They're actually getting 4.5, so give me plus 4.5 with Lamar, minus 118, and they're plus 160 to win straight up, because I like Lamar to win straight up today against UL Monroe. Chattanooga and Bellarmine, I project Chattanooga by 15. And Chattanooga's only laying 2.5, so give me minus 2.5 with Chattanooga against Bellarmine. All right, 7:15, ESPN, Indiana at number 20, Florida State. The Seminoles, I project as a 3.5 point favorite, and they are laying 3.5. So I got that line correct. So I have to go to the total, 139.5. I'm going to take the over. I think that both teams are talented on the offensive side of the ball, and there's a little value on the over. So I'm taking over 139.5 at minus 108. ESPN 2, 7:15, Georgia Tech, Nebraska. I project Georgia Tech by 8.5. Georgia Tech's getting 1.5. I don't understand why Nebraska's favored. So give me Georgia Tech plus the 1.5. I understand it could be a letdown spot after the big upset win over Kentucky, because it would be so college basketball 2020 for Georgia Tech to upset Kentucky, but then followed up by a loss against Nebraska. So give me Georgia Tech plus the 1.5. A lot of juice there at minus 118. Better off taking the money line at minus 102 for them to win straight up. 7:30, Southeastern Louisiana against Louisiana Tech. I project Tech by 26.5. They're giving 18.5, so I'm laying the 18.5 with Louisiana Tech, although a little bit of juice there at minus 112. Mobile UAB we can skip. Alabama State Samford canceled. 8 o'clock, Stephen F. Austin at number 2 Baylor. I project Baylor by 18. And Baylor is giving 23.5. So give me Stephen F. Austin plus a 23.5, although the juice is on him at minus 112. Longhorn Network, Texas State at number 13 Texas. I project the Longhorns by 13. The Longhorns are laying 18.5. So give me Texas State plus 18.5. And I'm getting value here at minus 104. Southern against Arkansas. I project Arkansas by 15.5. And I don't have a line for this game. I'm just going to say Arkansas will win big. Fresno Pacific San Jose State we can skip. McKendree Drake we can skip. Southern Utah at Utah Valley. I project Utah Valley by 2. Meanwhile, Southern Utah is giving 3.5. So I'm taking Utah Valley plus the 3.5. Juices on it at minus 115. I'm taking them to win straight up to at plus 138. Southern Miss against Tulane. I project Tulane by 2.5. They're giving 6.5. So give me Southern Miss plus the 6.5 against Tulane. Southeast Missouri State at Lipscomb. I project Lipscomb by 11.5. They're giving 7.5. So give me Lipscomb minus the 7.5 against Southeast Missouri State. Again, a lot of value at minus 104. Fox Sports 1, Big East Big 12 battle, Oklahoma against Xavier. I project Oklahoma by 4.5. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's getting 1.5. I think Oklahoma is very valuable as an underdog here, so giving Oklahoma plus 1.5, and the juice is on them at minus 112, and I like them straight up at plus 102 as well. Sam Houston State at number 7 Houston, postponed. Liberty, Missouri, I project Missouri by 1. Meanwhile, Missouri is favored by a whopping 10.5. I'm taking Liberty plus the 10.5. I think this Liberty team is good. And they're 5-1 to win straight up, which I don't know if they'll win straight up, but that is really enticing, getting the A-Sun favorite against a not-so-great Missouri team at 5-1 to win straight up. 8:30, Colorado Christian, Northern Colorado, we can skip. 9 o'clock, Santa Clara and Cal Poly. I project Santa Clara by 33. Meanwhile, Santa Clara, I don't have that line in front of me on FanDuel, but ESPN has it at 12, so I'm going to lay the 12 with Santa Clara against Cal Poly. CBS Sports Network, Cal Pepperdine. I project Pepperdine by 8.5. Meanwhile, Pepperdine's favored by 5.5. I'm going to lay the 5.5 with Pepperdine against Cal. You know, everyone and their brother's going to take Cal and be like, ooh, Pac-12 team, 5.5 point underdog. But the juice is on them at minus 118. That line's going to go down. I'm taking Pepperdine minus the 5.5 at the valuable minus 104. Idaho against Washington State. I project the Cougars by 29. They're giving 18.5, so I'm laying the 18.5 with Washington State against Idaho. San Diego against UCLA. I project the Bruins by 31.5. Meanwhile, they're giving 18.5, so I'm going to lay the 18.5 with UCLA against San Diego. Boise State, BYU. I project BYU by 10.5. Meanwhile, BYU is giving 4.5, so I'm going to lay the 4.5 with BYU at minus 105. Denver, Wyoming. Wyoming I have projected as a 17-point favorite. They're giving 14.5, so I'm going to lay the 14.5 with Wyoming at minus 106. 9:15 ESPN 2, Pitt at Northwestern, ACC Big Ten Challenge. I project Northwestern by 0.5. Meanwhile, Northwestern is giving 3.5, so I'm giving Pitt plus the 3.5 at minus 105. And I think they have a shot to win this game outright. So plus 152 at the money line is enticing. Number 4, Michigan State at number 18, Virginia, unfortunately canceled. Eastern Washington, UNLV canceled. 11 o'clock, Seattle, Washington. I should say Seattle at Washington. I project Washington by 17. Washington's giving 12.5, so I'm going to lay the 12.5 with Washington against Seattle. And last but not least, Florida A&M at Oregon. I project Oregon by 32.5. Oregon is giving 25.5. So give me Oregon minus the 25.5 against Florida A&M tonight. Alrighty then. Now we'll discuss the latest with the NHL. Pierre LeBrun reported not long ago that the Board of Governors have a 4 p.m. Eastern Time call today. It's an update on all the events of this past week. No vote is expected, but obviously owner's vote is coming soon once the NHL and the Players Association finalize the season plan. And like I mentioned yesterday, January 13th looks like a realistic target date to start the season. Pierre LeBrun and then some others, Elliot Friedman and Emily Kaplan of ESPN, have all been on this story. I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, January 13th falls on a Wednesday. So we'll obviously do the big mega NHL seasons prediction podcast either on the 12th or the 11th or maybe at the end of the previous week. So you would expect probably, assuming that's going to be the start date of the season, training camps to start probably right after Christmas, like the 28th, and have a short training camp, maybe like a week, and maybe 1 or 2 preseason games, just to get players' legs going and whatnot. Maybe a couple preseason games between, let's say, the 7th and the 12th. Maybe each team will have 3, including a back-to-back. And like I said, training camp, I think, would open on the 28th of December, right after Christmas. So you have like a week and a half, kind of like the NBA in a way. Like their training camp kind of got going like ASAP. And now the preseason is at the end of next week. So NBA had a little bit of a longer training camp. Players started reporting NBA-wise, I'd say on Monday it was. So I think the NHL will do something similar, like players report December 28th, and then preseason games will be like January 7th, January 8th, January 9th, 10th, 11th, and then the season will start on the 13th. And obviously the Lightning won the cup, so you expect that they get the first game, they get their rings, and they'll watch. NBC is going to give them the Penguins or something like that, just for the ratings. Or it's Philadelphia. Philadelphia would be a better on paper matchup because I think Philadelphia is going to be really good this year. Or maybe they'll give them the Rangers and Alexis Lafreniere, but they're going to give them a team from the Eastern Conference in all likelihood, just for the ratings. Or maybe the Chicago Blackhawks in the West. And don't forget, one of the caveats for the season is that they're realigning the divisions temporarily because they're going to do a Canadian division with the Canadians, the Maple Leafs, the Senators, the Jets, the Flames, the Oilers, the Canucks. And I feel like I'm missing one more Canadian team, or maybe they'll do it like that. Yeah, they're probably going to put those 7 together. And then they'll merge some of the Atlantic and the Metros. So the Metro, I think, will probably remain the same. And then they'll merge Atlantic with some of the Central teams, like the Blackhawks. So the Blackhawks and the Red Wings will be in the same division again. They'll probably put the Predators with them. So obviously the Atlantic teams that are not in Canada are the Florida Panthers, the Buffalo Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings, the Boston Bruins, and the Lightning. And then they'll probably go Blackhawks, Predators, and maybe the St. Louis Blues. And then the Central Division, they'll probably do, they'll move some of the, they'll probably merge, like, Vegas, or maybe they'll do it the Pacific Division, or call it something else, the whatever West Division or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see how they realign the divisions this year. We'll obviously talk about it on the podcast as the divisions will be leaked. So like I mentioned earlier, the 7 Canadian teams in one, and then the Metro will stay the Metro unless they shuffle that division a little bit. And then the Lightning, the Bruins, the Red Wings, the Sabres, the Panthers, and then they'll probably merge like the Blackhawks, the Predators, and the Blues. So that's 8. The Metro is 8. The Canadian teams are 7 in total, and then they'll probably merge Avalanche, Vegas, the 3 California teams, Arizona, and there's somebody else that's missing. Oh, the Minnesota Wild will probably go with that division too, because that's who I was missing. So, or maybe they move Minnesota to the other division. So, that's how I think they will do it. Or maybe they'll break up the Metro division a little bit, which I don't think so. I think they'll probably merge Central and Atlantic and call it something else, and then merge the Pacific and the other half of the Central, and then combine the Canadian teams. That's my prediction on how the hockey divisions will play out. Right now we'll preview tonight's episode of The Masked Singer. It's a holiday episode tonight. You're going to get a performance from Tori Kelly, who was obviously unmasked last week as the Seahorse. And there's going to be animated clues for the final 3, so it's important that the diehards and people watch tonight's show. So the final 3 perform never before holiday songs, and there's new clues as well. So you got to pick up on the clues, and obviously I'd like to watch it because I could have a change in my guess of who each of the final 3 is. Ken Jeong's apparently going to have a performance of some sort, so that's going to be interesting as well. So we're just going to recap last Wednesday's episode, Super 6. So the crocodile, the mushroom, and the sun are the 3 left. They had special clues in the group performance of Take On Me by Aha. Crocodiles was Jean's Block, Mushrooms was Cooling Court, and Suns was Early Riser. Crocodile hinted about driving out hours after the show to see his kids. And his super clue was a pizza rat, and he performed I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. That was his best performance of the season. And his connection clue was to Craig Robinson, in which he said, can't wait to share the screen with him again. Obviously, those two had a tie-in in a movie, or meaning Crocodile and Craig Robinson. And I think this is AJ McLean of the Backstreet Boys as This Is the End was the tie-in. Obviously, they both played roles in it. So that's why I think this is AJ McLean of the Backstreet Boys. And I thought it was AJ after he performed Toxic, and then I was kind of back on Donnie Wahlberg. So it goes from Donnie Wahlberg to AJ McLean, to Donnie Wahlberg back to AJ McLean. So I'm going to go with AJ McLean for the crocodile. And that's who Craig Robinson guessed. And Ken Jung went with Nick Lachey, although Nick Lachey is in play, I think, for it too. Harry Mushroom Super Clue was a clock that went from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Performed Valerie by Amy Winehouse. It was one of the better performances I've seen all season. That was Mushroom's best performance of the year, just like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing was for Crocodile. My guess is Usher. It sounds just like Usher. And that would be just a slam dunk for the franchise to get Usher on the show. The connection clue is to Robin Thicke and said that not the first time they've connected. Obviously, it would make sense if those two connected in the past because they're both singers. And obviously, some of Robin's songs were in the same era as some of Usher's big hits. Robin went with Jaden Smith. Nicole went with Jordan Fisher. Craig went with Leslie Odom Jr. And Ken went with Keegan Michael Key. And then Sun went last. And then Sun hinted at that she was doing it just for fun. And then competition brought out the best in her in the show. Because she probably didn't expect other great singers like the Seahorses of the world and like Crocodile and people like that. The super clue was Breathing Fire. And there was a dragon in there. And Sun had the best performance in Masked Singer history with When the Party's Over by Billie Eilish. I thought that this was Christina Aguilera for weeks. After that performance, she sounded like Lady Gaga. And I got a little bit of Alicia Keys vibes as well. I like the Alicia Keys call because the fire hint, this girl is on fire. So it could be Alicia Keys. But it awfully sounded just like Lady Gaga in that performance. In that When the Party's Over performance. It was surreal. And whomever this Sun is, as I mentioned, this is the most talented singer that the show's ever had. And that was the best performance that the show has ever had. And I think Lady Gaga is arguably the most talented singer right now out there. And it sounded a lot like her. And then her connection clue is to Nicole Scherzinger. And Nicole's clue was that Nicole met this person in the bathroom. And that's pretty funny. Nicole went with Leanne Rimes and Brady Carlisle. Ken Jung went with Kate Hudson. And Craig Robinson went with Amelia Clark. And obviously last week, Popcorn went home as well as Jellyfish and Seahorse. Popcorn wound up being Taylor Dane. Jellyfish was Chloe Kim. And Seahorse was Tori Kelly. And Tori Kelly will perform on tonight's episode of The Masked Singer. All right, best bet of the day brought to you by FanDuel. There's a lot of good options for college basketball tonight. I am going to go for my best bet with Eastern Illinois minus 4.5 against Evansville. I just don't think Evansville is very good. So I'm going to take Eastern Illinois minus the 4.5 with a very valuable number at minus 104 against Evansville. And like I said, this is a very anti-Evansville pick. I project this 18.5. So I really think that Eastern Illinois is going to kick butt in this game. All right, that's it for the show today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping the college basketball slate and looking ahead to tomorrow night's slate. We'll recap the Masked Singer episode. We'll preview Thursday Night Football between the Rams and the Patriots. Maybe NFL Power Rankings as well. And my best bet of the day. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.